I want you to picture a scenario. It's a bit of a thought experiment, but stay with me for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine you decide to open let's make it a lemonade. Simple enough, right?
A classic. Can't go wrong.
But this isn't just any lemonade stand. You go all out. I mean, you're importing lemons from the Amalfi Coast. You hire a world-class architect to design the...
Right, a Zaha Hadid lemonade stand.
Exactly. And you spend, let's just say, a nice round number, $200 on this whole setup.
That's a very high-stakes lemonade stand. I like where the...
Extremely high. So, you open for business, you're excited, but by the end of the day, you look in the cash box and you realize sold maybe 3 cups. You do the math and it's back. You've lost almost the entire $200. You are deep in the red.
So in the traditional business world, or really, just in the realm of basic sanity, we would call that a disaster. That is a failure.
Without question.
You pack up, you cut your losses, and you try to figure out what went so wrong so you don't, burn cash like that ever again.
Exact. That is the rational, logical response. But, and this is where today's deep dive gets incredibly strange, imagine if you stood up on that expensive counter, looked at your empty cash box, and announced to the whole neighborhood, actually, no, this was a total victory. We did exactly what we set out to do. We succeeded.
It sounds completely delusional. It sounds like someone who has absolutely lost touch with reality.
And yet, that is precisely the paradox we're going to be unpacking today. We're looking at a situation where the traditional metrics of success, profit, viewership, longevity, cultural footprint, are completely at odds with the creator's own definition of success.
And we are, of course, dissecting the fallout of the Acolyte, Star Wars series created by Leslye Headland.
And folks, let's be really clear right from the jump. This is not just a review of the show. We are not here to debate the CGI quality or rank the lightsaber fights or complain about plot holes in episode 4.
No. This is something else.
We are looking at a much more fascinating and, frankly, a much more controversial argument about the very purpose of this show.
And to do that, we are analyzing a specific set of critiques and reporting that's come out. We're looking at articles from Fandom Pulse and the Trent Report by John F. Trent.
And those sources also feature some very sharp, very biting commentary from a novelist named Isaac Young. He's the author of a book called The Domes of Calrathia.
And we should probably clarify for you, the listener, that this deep dive is specifically analyzing the critique that these outlets are providing. They offer a highly critical cultural and financial breakdown of the show's production and its aftermath.
And just to set the stage here, these sources, they are not holding back. They aren't just saying the show wasn't good. They're making a much bigger claim. They're arguing that the show was actually a success, but for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with entertaining an audience or making a profit.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really understand this conflicting world. We have the creator, Leslye Headland, claiming victory. Then you have the studio, Disney, basically admitting to financial failure. And then you have these critics, Trent and Young, who come in and argue that Headland is actually, right, the show was a success, but it was a success as a mechanism for wealth transfer and what they specifically term cultural vandalism.
Cultural vandalism. Wow. That is a heavy term. It implies intent. It implies deliberate damage.
It does. And we are going to explore exactly what they mean by that. We're going to look at the economics, the lore, the sociology of this whole production. We're moving way, way beyond the simple liked it or hated it discourse into something much more rigorous.
Okay, so let's dive right into the deep end here. We have the cancellation, right? The show is gone. No season 2 is coming. The sets are being struck down as we speak.
It's over.
But amidst this cancellation, we get this statement from Leslye Headland. And this comes from a newly released book, The Art of Star Wars, The Acolyte.
Which, in itself is a bit of an interesting artifact. These art of books are usually victory laps. They're celebrations of a legacy that's just beginning.
Yeah, a collector's item for a beloved.
But in this case, it almost serves as a bit of a tombstone for this series.
So Headland wrote a specific declaration in this book. I want you to walk us through this quote because the wording is very, very specific.
It is. She wrote, and I'm quoting directly here, "When we set out to make The Acolyte, I hoped to create a new expression of Star Wars, inventing something to expand on the storytelling I have loved since I was a child."
Okay, a new expression. I want to put a pin in that phrase right there. She didn't say honor the old expression or continue the old expression. She said, create a new one. That feels significant.
It is extremely significant. It signals a departure right from the start. But then she delivers the real punchline. She writes, and again, this is a direct quote, "And since it premiered in 2024, the fans of the series have affirmed this. We succeeded."
We succeeded. Past tense. It's a done deal, a closed case. Victory has been declared.
She believes that the fans, her specific fans, presumably, have affirmed her vision. To her, the project is a closed loop of success. It's like, I set out to do X, I did X, and some people liked X. Therefore, success.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. She's saying the fans affirmed it, but
Yeah.
didn't the show get canceled? I mean, usually if the fans affirm something in a big way, you get a season 2.
You get a toy line, you get a theme park ride.
Right, you don't get a pink slip. So that's the friction point. While Headland is claiming this artistic and fan-based validation, the reality coming from the studio is, well, starkly.
It really is. We have a statement from Alan Bergman, who is the Disney Entertainment co-chairman. He spoke to Vulture about this, and he did not mince his words.
And this is important because Disney executives usually speak in very guarded, diplomatic corporate language. It's all strategic realignment and leveraging synergy. You know the drill.
They absolutely do. But Bergman was surprisingly explicit here. He said, and I quote, "So as it relates to Acolyte, we are happy with our performance, but it wasn't where we needed it to be given the cost structure of that title, quite frankly, to go and make a season 2.
Given the cost structure, that sounds like the polite corporate way of saying you spent way, way too much money and nobody watched it.
That's essentially it, yes. It's the polite way of saying the return on investment, the ROI, was negative, deeply negative.
And he was clear that this was the reason.
He explicitly stated, so that's the reason why we didn't do that. It wasn't creative differences. It wasn't that the actors were busy. It was math. Simple, cold, hard math.
Okay, so let's look at that math. Because the Trent report provides some of the data on the viewership. How bad was it?
It was. Well, concerning is a gentle way to put it. According to the reporting from John F. Trent, the show struggled to even reach 500 million minutes viewed in a single week.
Now, to a layman like me, 500 million minutes still sounds like a lot of. If I had 500 million minutes of anything, I'd probably be pretty happy.
Context is absolutely key. In the brutal world of streaming, for a property as massive and globally recognized as Star Wars, that is a low number, very low.
So what's a good number for comparison? What was The Mandalorian doing in its prime?
Oh, The Mandalorian was regularly clearing 1 billion minutes, sometimes much more. It was a cultural phenomenon. The Acolyte wasn't even in the same league.
And the sources say it was hovering around, what, 400 and something?
Often around 444 million minutes. And even more telling than that, there were weeks where it fell off the Nielsen charts entirely.
It fell off the charts for a flagship premiere Star Wars show on Disney Plus current.
Completely.
Yeah.
Just gone from the top 10. And you have to pair that viewership data with the budget. This show cost around $200 million.
$200 million. That is a staggering amount of money. That's blockbuster movie money. That's Avengers-level money spent on a streaming show.
It is. So when Alan Bergman says the performance wasn't where it needed to be given the cost structure, he means that for $200 million, you need a cultural phenomenon. You need Stranger Things numbers. You need everyone talking about Baby Yoda.
And The Acolyte just didn't deliver that audience. It wasn't the conversation.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So we have this massive, unbridgeable disconnect. On one side, you have the business viability view, Disney saying, we lost a fortune, this is over.
And on the other side, you have the artistic validation view, Leslye Headland saying, we created a new expression, we succeeded.
But this is where the sources we're analyzing today take a very sharp, very unexpected turn. They argue that we shouldn't just dismiss Headland's comments as delusion or, corporate spin.
Wait, what?
They argue that she is actually telling the truth.
How can she possibly be telling the truth if the show tanked financially? I mean, how can losing millions and millions of dollars be a success in any universe?
Because according to the critique from Isaac Young and John F. Trent, the goal was never financial profit in the traditional sense.
The goal wasn't to make money for a business.
If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it looks like a failure every time. But what if the goal was never to climb the tree? What if the goal was something else entirely? Then from that perspective, maybe she's right.
Okay, this is a fascinating twist. This brings us to what we might call the wealth transfer hypothesis. This sounds less like film criticism and more like forensic accounting.
It really is an economic critique at its core. Isaac Young, again, he's the author of The Domes of Calrathia. He posits that the show was not a failure for the people who were making it.
Not for the creative.
For them, it was, in his exact words, a smashing success. A smashing success in terms of distributing wealth.
Distributing wealth to who? I mean, ideally, a business distributes wealth to the shareholders via profit. That's the whole point.
In this theory, the flow of money is very different. Young argues, and this is a quote from his commentary, Disney spent around $200 million on the Acolyte. That money didn't vanish into thin air. It went into the pockets of their activists, their people.
They're active. So the argument is that the budget essentially served as a massive paycheck for a specific group, completely regardless of the final product's quality or...
Precise. Young calls it a massive wealth transfer to their client. He suggests that in this modern entertainment ecosystem, the creators are, in a sense, insulated from the consequences of financial failure.
That's a really interesting point, because usually in the real world, in your job, in my job, if I do a bad job or if my project loses the company a ton of money, I'm in trouble.
You're getting a call from HR.
Yeah, I might lose my job. I certainly won't get a bonus. There are cons.
Right. Accountability is usually pretty swift. But Young notes this specific. He says, and I'm quoting again, it indescribably helps with burnout if you don't have to worry about being a financial failure as an artist.
So there's a safety net.
Or perhaps a complete lack of accountability that allows these creators to walk away rich, even if the studio takes a 9-figure loss.
It's like they're playing with house money. They get paid up front. The check has already cleared. So whether the show tanks or not, it doesn't actually affect their bottom line.
In a way, yes. And Young goes even further with this. He argues that what he calls the modern political left in Hollywood has built these massive institutions with hundreds of millions of dollars to support even their most sad excuses of talent.
And we should be clear, this is his specific political framing of...
Absolutely. This is his analysis. He explicitly contrasts this with the right, arguing they have no such support institutions in the art.
So his theory is that it creates this uneven playing field where one side can essentially fail upwards because the funding is ideological, not commercial.
That is the absolute core of his economic argument.
Hmm.
And he uses a very, very evocative metaphor to describe what's happening to these franchises. He argues that Hollywood institutions are being strip-mined.
Strip-mined.
Yeah.
Like taking all valuable resources out of the ground until the land is barren.
That's the image, yes. He argues that the people currently in charge are not trying to shepherd these franchises for the next 50 years. They aren't trying to protect the legacy of Star Wars for your grandchildren.
So they're not planting trees for the next generation.
No. According to Young, they're clear-cutting the forest to sell for firewood. He writes, understand that these are not people who plan to be carefully shepherding these institutions for decades to come. They've been strip mining every IP and franchise for the past 20 years, making vanity projects while robbing these institutions for everything they're worth.
That is a scathing indictment. It implies that profit for the studio, what? An afterthought, secondary.
Young actually says, and this is a direct quote, making a profit is a happy act.
A happy accident. So it's nice if it happens, but it's not the primary objective of the
He argues the primary goal is funding these vanity projects and ensuring personal wealth for the people involved before the collapsing economy, as he puts it, hits.
So it's like a bust-out scheme. You run up all the credit, you take all the cash out of the register, and you let the building burn down behind you as you walk away.
That's a very good analogy for his argument. And he doesn't just leave it as a general theory. He points to specific examples. He points directly to the top of Lucasfilm.
He mentions Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy.
He does. She's definitely the figurehead at Lucasfilm. She's the one greenlighting these projects. She's the one in charge.
And what's his point about?
The source, the Trent Report, claims her net worth is around $300 million. Young's argument is that regardless of whether Lucasfilm collapsed, regardless of whether the fan base abandons the franchise, regardless of Disney's stock price, she's going to be fine.
She's insulated from the failure.
Completely. He says, is Kathleen Kennedy going to worry about the collapse of Lucasfilm? No, she's going to be fine. And he argues she'll walk away halfway to being a billion. That's the core of the wealth transfer. The success in this model lies in the personal enrichment of the creators and the executive, not in the health of the brand or the satisfaction of the customer.
So if we follow this logic, this very cynical logic, then Leslye Headland is right. She did.
How so?
Well, she got the show made. She got paid. Her team got paid. They got to put their specific vision on screen using Disney's money. The fact that it got canceled afterwards is almost irrelevant to that personal financial success.
The transaction was completed.
Yeah.
The money was transferred from the corporation to the individuals. Mission accomplished. The failure of the show is just a line item on a corporate balance sheet in Burbank that doesn't affect their personal bank accounts in the slightest.
But the sources argue it wasn't just about the money, right? It wasn't just a simple bank robbery. There's an ideological component as well.
Yes, and this is where we pivot from the economics to the lore to the very soul of the franchise. If it were just about getting paid, they could have made a generic sci-fi show.
Right. Why use Star Wars?
They chose Star Wars for a reason, and this is what the sources refer to as the battle for the Force.
The battle for the Force? That sounds epic. But we're talking about definitions here, aren't we? Metaphysics.
We are. It is the central conflict in what they're calling the cultural vandalism argument. The critics, Trent and Young, they argue that the show succeeded in hollowing out the franchise by fundamentally redefining its core metaphysics.
Redefining the Force. That seems like a pretty tall order. The Force is so well established. It's the energy field. It binds the galaxy together, all of that.
Well, let's look at what the Acolyte actually introduced. In episode 3, we meet the character Mother Anisia. She leads this coven of witches on the planet Brendok.
Okay.
And she introduces this new concept. She calls it the thread.
The thread. Okay. How did you define it? What is it?
She says, and this is a key bit of dialogue, all living things are connected by by the same thread, a thread woven through all of existence. Some call it a force and claim to use it, but we know the thread is not a power you wield. And then she says, pull the thread. Change everything.
Pull the thread, change everything. That sound really distinct from the Jedi view. The Jedi always talk about using the Force or being an ally of the Force. As she talks about pulling it, it sounds manipulative, almost like a string puller.
It does. It has a different connotation. And Leslye Headland was very open about her interpretation of this in the press. In an interview with Total Film, which the sources cite, she stated, "There is no light without darkness. The Force is about balance."
No light without dark. I mean, that sounds profound on the surface, almost like a yin-yang kind of thing. You know, you need the night to appreciate the day. What's the problem with that?
According to the sources, and more importantly, if you look strictly at the original lore as established by George Lucas himself, yes, it is a significant, and they would argue a destructive deviation. They say it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the moral universe that Lucas created.
How so? Okay, let's go back to the source material, the original films.
Ah.
How did Obi-Wan first define the Force?
He said it's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. Very mystical.
Right, and then Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, he adds to it, life creates it, makes it grow. Luminous beings are we? Not matter.
It's very spiritual, very omnipresent, sacred. But here is the crucial distinction that this expert commentary from the sources highlight. George Lucas, in a writer's meeting for the Clone Wars series, explicitly defined the nature of the light and the dark.
And he didn't view them as two equal halves of a whole that imbalance.
No, that is a very common misconception. But the sources argue it's fundamentally wrong. Lucas was crystal clear. He said the dark side is self. It's about pleasure, it's temporary, it's about the biological, carnal self.
And the light side.
The light side is selfless. It's about joy, not pleasure. It's about the spiritual. It's everlasting.
So it's not about balancing good and evil like two sides of a scale.
No. Lucas's view, as presented in these critiques, was that the dark side is a cancer. It's a corruption of the natural, healthy state of the Force. You don't balance a body by having 50% healthy cells and 50% cancer cells.
That's a fantastic analogy. If I have 50% cancer, I'm dying. I'm not balanced.
Exactly. You achieve balance by removing the cancer. You achieve balance in the Force by eliminating the corruption of the dark side, not by making peace.
So the balance that the prophecy talks about is the removal of the toxicity, not the coexistence with it.
Precisely. And the sources bring in a really fascinating theological angle here to explain this better. They reference a review of Return of the Jedi written by an Archbishop Puzzlo.
An archbishop reviewing Star Wars. That's a cut. I love it.
It's a fascinating analysis. Puzzlo argues that the Force represents a universal nature, and the entire story is about the immense struggle between the fallen nature, that's the dark side, and the light side. The goal of the hero is to conquer the fallen nature within themselves.
So it's a moral struggle. It's a clear right versus wrong, good versus evil, no gray.
Exactly. And this is where the critique of Headland and the Acolyte comes in so forcefully. The sources argue that by introducing this thread concept and this idea that there is no light without darkness, she is replacing that moral clarity with moral relativism.
She's saying you need the evil. She's saying the cancer is a necessary part of the body.
Right. If you say there is no light without darkness, you're arguing that evil is a necessary and integral component of existence. You are moving from a worldview of conquering the fallen nature to one of merely coexisting with it, or even embracing it as necessary. The critics argue this is a complete perversion of the core moral framework of Star Wars.
So when they say the show was a success in this regard, they mean it's successfully planted this new relativistic and, in their view, corrupting definition into the franchise.
Yes, it diluted the original meaning. It muddied the waters. It's what John F. Trent calls wearing the skin suit of the franchise.
The skin suit. That is a seriously creepy image. It's like something out of a horror movie.
It's a very vivid metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah.
The idea is that the show looks like Star Wars. It has lightsabers or, light whip. It has robe. It has the classic sound effects. It's wearing the skin.
But inside,
the internal organs, the soul, the core definitions, they have been swapped out for something completely alien and contradictory to the original.
So it looks like the thing you love, but it doesn't act like the thing you love. It doesn't believe what the thing you love believes. It's an imposter.
Exactly. And the sources are adamant that this was not accidental. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate attempt to redefine the mythology from the ground. And nowhere is this more apparent, according to the critique, than in how the show handles the prophecy of the Chosen One.
Oh boy, the Chosen One. This is the big one. This is Anakin Skywalker we're talking about, the central pillar of the first.
The absolute core.
Yeah.
The entire saga, episodes I through 3-6, is essentially the tragedy and the ultimate redemption of Anakin Skywalker.
So how does the Acolyte mess with that? I mean, Anakin isn't even in the show. It's set 100 years before he's born.
It's about the precedent it sets. It's about what it does to the lore before he arrives. The show introduces the twins, Osha and May, and we have to look very closely at how they were created.
They were created by that coven of witches, right?
Specifically, as the sources describe it, by a coven of lesbian witches, using a dark ritual to manipulate the Force and create life. They created life without a father.
Okay. And why is that a problem for the Anakin? He was also created without a father. Shmi Skywalker says there was no.
Because Anakin's birth was supposed to be a miracle. A unique, unprecedented, singular event. It was meant to be the Force itself striking back against the growing power of the Sith by creating its own agent of balance.
And if a group of witches on some random planet can just whip up some Force babies whenever they want using a dark side ritual,
it completely cheapens Anakin's origin. It devalues it.
It stops being a divine intervention and starts being a magic trick you can just learn from a book. It becomes a recipe.
Exactly. If anyone can do it, then Anakin isn't special. It makes his existence mundane, repetitive. It fundamentally undercuts the entire point of his character and the prophet.
And the sources go deep into Lucas's original intent here, don't they?
They absolutely do. They reference George Lucas's commentaries from the making of Revenge of the Sith and also from the 2005 Chosen One featurette. He was absolutely adamant about this. He said, the prophecy was right. Anakin was the chosen one.
No ambiguity there.
Yeah.
Lucas didn't say Anakin was one of many chosen ones.
No, he was the one. And Lucas explained exactly how the prophecy is fulfilled, which is also something often debated. He said, he takes the ounce of good still left in him and destroys the Emperor out of compassion for his son. That is the moment. That is how the prophecy is fulfilled.
It's all about redemption. It's about that single moment in Return the Jedi where he sees Luke being tortured and he makes a choice. He picks up the Emperor and throws him down that reactor shaft.
It is. The sources point to the very end of Return of the Jedi. That final visual of the Force Ghost standing there. You see Obi-Wan, you see Yoda, and you see a redeemed Anakin Skywalker.
The saints of Star Wars, the critics call.
And that image is the ultimate proof of the story's moral clarity. Anakin fell, he committed atrocities, but he was redeemed through a selfless act, and he destroyed the Sith. The critique is that the Acolyte erodes the foundation of that entire story. By changing the nature of the Force to the thread and by replicating the miracle birth, it undercuts the unique significance of the films that came before it.
So this ties right back into that cultural vandalism. It's not just about making a bad show that people don't like. It's about actively damaging the foundation of the good movies that people have loved for decades.
That is the argument in a nutshell. Trent and Young describe the effect of this as leaving a psychic scar.
A psychic scar? That sounds permanent.
They reference a discussion they had regarding the Narnia adaptation, but they apply the same concept here. The idea is that these new shows taint the original work for viewers, especially new viewers. Once you've seen the Force deconstructed as just a thread or a balance of necessary evil, it becomes harder to watch A New Hope with that same original sense of wonder and moral clarity.
I get that. It's like when someone tells you a really disturbing fact about a song you love, or you find out the artist is a terrible person. You can never quite hear it the same. It just changes.
Precisely. You start viewing the classics through the lens of the new deconstructed interpretation. And the sources argue this is intentional. They connect Leslye Headland to a broader pattern of what they see at Lucasfilm. They mention Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi and J.J. Abrams as well.
The usual suspects in these kinds of...
They position Headland not as an outlier, but as the one who ramped up an existing trend. The argument is that the ultimate goal of these creators is to inject modern identity politics, what the sources specifically refer to as queer theory and woke ideology, into the core of the mythos.
And succeeding in doing that is the real definition of success for them.
This brings us to the final piece of this very complex puzzle. Cultural vandalism as a measure of success. If your goal is to hollow out traditional myths and replace them with these modern identity politics, then by that metric, the Acolyte was a massive unqualified success.
Let's just trace the logic, critics. Did they get the money to make their project?
Yes.
$200 million.
Did they distribute that money to their ideological allies, according to the wealth transfer theory? Yes.
Did they successfully broadcast their message of moral relativism and a redefined force to a global audience?
Yes, it's on Disney Plus forever.
And did they disrupt and, in their view, permanently damage the established lore of the Chosen One?
Yeah, that's the psychic scar.
So even if nobody watched it, even if Disney lost a fortune...
Even then, because the artifact exists now, it's canon, it's on the server, the damage in the eyes of these critics is done. The scar is there. The definition has been altered.
It really reframes the whole conversation. I mean, usually we think of a flop as a mistake, a miscalculation. You know, oops, we made a bad movie, our bad.
Right, an honest failure.
But these sources are arguing it wasn't a mistake at all. It was a tactical victory in a culture war.
It feels like we're talking about a battlefield rather than the entertainment industry.
In the eyes of Fandom Pulse and the Trent Report, it is a battle. They view this as a cultural struggle for the meaning of our modern. The wealth transfer, is the logistic. It's how the army gets paid. The lore redefinition is the strategy. It's how the territory is taken, shaped.
It's a really comprehensive, if highly critical, theory of everything for what they see happen.
So let's try to summarize this whole thing, because we've covered a lot of ground on some very, very heady concepts. We basically have three distinct competing definitions of this on the
Let's break it down for the list. First, you have the studio's reality. To Disney and Alan Bergman, The Acolyte was a straightforward financial failure. It cost too much, it returned too little, and therefore it was canned. Pure business, cold, hard cash.
Then you have the creator's reality. To Leslye Headland, it was an artistic success. She created her new expression. She expanded the story in the way she wanted, and she feels affirmed by her specific fan artistic validation.
And finally, you have the critic's reality, which is what we've been deep diving. To Trent and Young and these sources, the show was a profound success, but as a deliberate act of wealth transfer and cultural vandalism. It succeeded in extracting money from the studio to the activists, and it succeeded in eroding the moral and mythological core of Star Wars.
It's just incredible how the same event, a canceled TV show, can be viewed through such radically different lenses. It really highlights the fragmentation of not just the fan base, but the entire entertainment. We aren't just disagreeing on quality anymore. We are disagreeing on the very purpose of storytelling itself.
We really are. Is storytelling about building myths and providing moral instruction? Is it about generating profit and mass entertainment? Or is it about ideological deconstruction and worth read? Those are three very different goals.
Which leads us to the big question. The provocative thought we want to leave you with today. If the traditional metrics, profit, viewership, ratings, don't actually matter to the creators, or if they're insulated from them, as Isaac Young, what happens next?
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? The wealth transfer theory suggests a completely broken feedback. Usually the audience decides what succeeds. If we watch it, they make more of it. If we don't, they stop. It's a democracy of the wallet.
But if the creators get rich regardless, if that burnout insulation he talks about actually work, then our wallets don't matter anymore.
Exactly. If the traditional metrics of profit and viewership no longer dictate whether a creator is considered successful within the industry, what does that mean for the future of blockbuster storytelling?
Are we entering an era where these beloved franchises exist primarily to sustain the creators and their ideological project, rather than to entertain the audience that built them in the first place?
It's a deeply disturbing thought. Are these massive culture-defining IPs, Star Wars, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, are they just becoming massive ATMs for a select group of people while the stories themselves wither and die on the vine?
Are we watching the strip mining happen in real time?
That is something for you to mull over the next time you see a multi-million-dollar project get canceled and the director stands up and calls it a victory.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this very deep dive into the business, the philosophy, and the controversy surrounding The Acolyte.
It was a pleasure. As always, keep questioning the narrative.
We'll see you next time.